Bear with me 1 second. Aha! This is what I was looking for, this medal, because I've run marathons before. I've run an ultra marathon, I've run lots of half marathons, I've represented Team GB in my age group at triathlon, I've done a lot of races, but my favourite distance by far is the marathon, and the London Marathon, easily my favourite race. And what I want for you is those same feelings of joy that I have when I run these races. It's as simple as that, and that's what this channel is dedicated to. So if you stick around on this channel, if you subscribe to it, what you're going to get is you're going to get free training plans for all distances from 5k up to marathon. I'm going to empty my head of all of my knowledge for free every week. Tutorials, ideas for sessions, like I say, training plans, and you're going to follow mine and Mary's journey towards our training to London Marathon and some other races that we've got planned for this year and beyond. That's what I want, is to help you on your journey. And what's the point in me having all this knowledge and not sharing it with you? So that's what the channel is all about. And I am a qualified level 3 BTF triathlon coach. I'm also a PE teacher, and I have a sports science degree. So I'm trying to use all of the knowledge I've built up over the past 15 or more years to give to you in the easiest ways, the most understandable ways, and the most relevant ways possible to get you to your goal. It is snowing out there, and I'm going to go for a run with Mary. And here's the thing. We've made all of our mistakes, totally on purpose by the way, so that you don't have to. Like when I ran in that marathon and ran the wrong way, Mary, do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Remember when you got too excited in Seville?
And nearly.
Yeah, we won't go there.
Over the finish.
Well, we've been there, that's what we're trying to say, and we've got your back. And you might be forgiven for wondering why we're out running in February saying that we're training for a marathon that's not for 33 weeks in October. And it's quite an important but very small distinction really, is that we just identify as runners, and that's what this channel is all about, is getting everybody to just, if you run, you're a runner, end of story. So whether it's February or April or October, we just run, and the goals are a kind of lovely byproduct, but the process is what we're addicted to. That's what we love. So I'm going to finish this run and love it, and then cut back to me in the studio where I can run through some of the most important things I think you need to consider when you're training for a marathon, and some of the easiest mistakes to avoid. Right, let's enjoy the run. So this is it. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you as much information as I possibly can without blowing your minds. I've tried to distill it to what I think are maybe the 6 key points to focus on when you start your marathon training journey, and just rest assured that there is a ton more on the channel. If you go into the playlist, the tutorials, the races, then you can see mine and Mary's experiences of both our running marathons and training for marathons and other races. There's loads on there. I mean, ultimately, I see it as my job to get you to the start line, or at least to help you to do that. So before I even give you the tips, just rest assured that on this YouTube channel, there is a playlist with training plans from 5k, beginner to 5k, all the way to marathon training plans. And there is even one ultimate training plan that can take you from complete beginner to a marathon. And there is plenty of time in which to do that. All free, all for you. Okay, let's get started. Tip number 1 is being on the start line is the number 1 thing. There is nothing worse than watching a race that you should have done because you overcooked it in training. So what you need to do is you need to find your sweet spot. And usually I would say it's between 3 and 4 runs per week is that sweet spot. You don't need to run 5 or 6 times a week, especially if you're newer to running. 3 will get you to a marathon. Mary and I have run multiple marathons based off of training 3 times a week. And I'll elaborate on that in a minute, because it's not like you're doing nothing on the other days, but we'll get to that. So find a schedule that works for you, that fits within your life, that is not something that's going to make you begrudge running because you have to do it when it won't work for you. Some people do undulating training schedules, which means that you just run every other day, and that would mean that you run 4 times one week and then 3 times the next week, 4 times the next week, and so on, because it undulates and there's not an even amount of days in the week. And again, with the structure, what I tend to do is I tend to do 3 weeks of gradual building and then 1 week of recovery. But that's how I like to structure my training all the way through the season, is having real defined blocks, because each block can give you a purpose. I'm currently in my recovery week now, and it is wonderful because I trained hard for 3 weeks and I really needed it. So make sure that the structure works for you and you give your body that bit of rest that it needs. Okay, tip 2. Come here, come here, come here. There is more to running than just running. You would be surprised the amount of people that don't realise that, but there is a lot more to running than running. And what I mean by that is, if you don't look after yourself outside of just the run, then you're making yourself more likely to get injured. So, invest in yourself with strength and conditioning. Think about learning some drills and things that you could do before your run to teach your body the right patterns to run in. Learn about things like strides to do after your session to add some really safe speed in. Or also make sure you stretch after every session, you know, keep that body supple and injury free. Even get a technique analysis. I have, in the past couple of marathon cycles, I've gone to someone to actually analyse my running to see if they can make sure that my running economy is good, okay, and going to keep me injury free. And finally, you might not like this bit about running, but the bit where your body actually gets itself stronger, where it rebuilds and repairs the muscles, is recovery. So do not neglect rest. It is absolutely vital for you to get stronger. That is a lot of information, and I'm sorry, I'm throwing it at you, but I want you to take as much away from this video as humanly possible. And moving quite nicely on from point 2, which is invest in all the strength and conditioning and the stretching, is do not ignore aches and pains. Unfortunately for us, when you're training for a marathon, sometimes aches, pains, niggles, they are inevitable. However, there are 2 ways that you can deal with these, and I've been through both, so trust me on this one. The first one is that you can ignore them and think they'll go away, that's fine. But stiffness leads to soreness, leads to injury. It's the pattern that goes on. So I tend to give myself a scale of 1 to 10. Anything below 4, I can deal with, and I think that's manageable. That's just aches and pains of general training. 4 and above, stop training and fix it, because trust me on this one, a few days out of running is so much better than pushing on for a few more sessions and then suddenly it becoming a few weeks or months out of running. And I've been through this, I've experienced it, I've made the mistakes, that's why I'm bringing them to you. So don't ignore aches and pains, that's really crucial, especially when you're actually trying to build consistency along a whole marathon training block. I call it prehab, not rehab. Look after yourself ahead of time. Make sure you're not going to pick up the injuries rather than looking after the injuries after the fact, once you're injured. So it is well worth just being sensible with your training. Put your ego in a box and make sure that you just take a few days off rather than a few weeks. And that way you'll be able to build consistency. Which leads me on nicely to point 4. And point 4 is that consistency is king or queen or whatever, but it trumps everything, okay? So when I say consistency is absolutely paramount, I mean it, and I mean build gradually, build in habits, build in patterns, but do not go for a run that is marathon distance 5 months out from the marathon. So pick a start point and build from there, but do it sensibly. I follow the 10% rule, so each week I allow the volume of my training to go up by 10%. If I want it to, I don't have to, sometimes I keep it as is. But if you do a 10k run one week, then maybe you could think about doing 11k the next week. Stick with the 10% rule and you can't go too far wrong. And if you're looking for consistency, and if it's the early days of you training for a marathon, maybe you never have, or maybe it's in the first couple of years, there's no need for speed work. Do you run at your 5k or VO2 max pace in a marathon? No. It is nice, and for more experienced runners who are looking for that extra edge, looking to take a couple of minutes off their time, then maybe, yeah, factor in some speed work. But it's not a necessity. Don't feel drawn into it. Don't feel like you have to, because it is a lot harder on your body in certain ways, you know, when you're pushing your muscles to their absolute limit. I've got through a lot of training cycles for marathons without doing any speed work, and it has done me no wrong. In fact, I know 225 marathoners who do no speed work whatsoever. They just stay consistent and in the base zones. So the longer you have to train for the marathon, the better. You can build even more gradually and consistently. Don't leave it to the 16 weeks before just because people say you need 16 weeks to train for a marathon. If you've got 33 weeks, which is from now to London Marathon 2021, there's 33 weeks. Get training now. And if you miss the odd session, because we're trying to build consistency, don't sweat it. You're building a pattern. Don't try and catch sessions up. Again, that's a recipe for disaster. Malcolm Brown, who is the coach of the Brownlees, he has coached Paula Radcliffe. He's coached a lot of elite Olympian athletes, and he has a saying, and it's almost like a paradoxical saying, but it's that no one session is critical, and yet every session is critical. So what he's saying is, don't sweat a missed session. It's not important, but have the idea that you're trying to be consistent and hit as many sessions as you possibly can in your mind, so that you don't see every session as unimportant. It's a bit of a paradox, but I get what he's saying is don't sweat it if you miss a session. Relax, just go to the next session and hit that instead. And that actually leads me on to point 5 quite nicely. We're stitching this all together, and that is that training is the perfect time to experiment. It is absolutely crucial to do that in training, because it's not race day. It's alright if things go wrong, you learn from them. That's how we get better as a runner. So when I talk about experimenting in training, I mean try different gels, find things that work for you, try different gel strategies. When you're on your longer runs, do you take them every 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes? What feels good while you're out there? And the same with equipment, footwear, clothing. These are all things that you can play around with and find out what the most comfortable is for you. And even your pacing to a certain extent. You can have a little play around with pacing, what feels natural, what feels the kind of speeds that you could run a marathon at. It's all there for you to have a play around, for you to have a trial, make notes when you come back and go, that didn't work, or that felt good. You're building a pattern over time of what works, so that nothing is left to race day. I love this saying, but the more you sweat in practice, the less you bleed in battle. And I stick by that. I am an absolute planner before the race, so that on race day, nothing is left to chance and I can just have my best day. And finally, this is more of a mindset one really, but do not see the race that you are training for as the end point. It is just a point in your running journey. And that's a really important distinction. If you identify as a runner who is running the London Marathon as part of their running journey, that's really different to someone who is training for the London Marathon. Because a runner who's running, and therefore running the London Marathon, is much more likely to then carry on after the London Marathon, go off and do other races, other distances. If you are training for the London Marathon and that is the only thing in your head, then the chances are what happens is once you've run the London Marathon, you get post-marathon blues or post-race blues. You've spent all this time building up to it, and then what next? But if you identify as a runner who has just run the London Marathon, you're in love with the process more than you are the end goal, and you're in it and you stay in it. So the moment that you start running, identify as a runner. It doesn't matter what speed you run, it doesn't matter how far you run. If you run, you're a runner. That's an important distinction, and it's something that you can build an identity around and stick in this game for life, because we all know that it's good for us and we all know that it's healthy. So suddenly when we get injury setbacks or we have races that don't go to plan, we don't fall out of it. We're in love with it, and we're in love with the process, and we stay in it. In it. And that's it. They're my 6 main tips, but there are a ton of other videos on this channel, information about how you do the long run, about session ideas, about fueling. Like I've said before, I'm trying to empty my brain and put it all on this channel. So if you do stick around, if you do subscribe, then you can follow our journey to the London Marathon and you can follow our journey onwards. So here's what I need you to do. Share with me now in the comments, write it down, make it solid. What are you training for as part of your journey? Not what are you training for only, but what is the next part of your journey that you're training for? Let me know if I can help you. Ask me any questions about running or triathlon, that's what I'm here for. And finally, this is my video of my experience of the London Marathon in 2019. Best race I ever did, like I say, smile on my face all of the way round. This is the subscribe button. This is Ben, Mary's downstairs, and I will see you on Sunday. Catch you on the flip side.